No, you can apply online. It's a timing issue typically. We'll get a non-resident who notifies us in January that they want to, be included on the list for this year's draw, and we'll tell them, you need to get we don't have a record of you on file, you need to get your Hunter Ed in, and they can send us a facsimile of it, their license that indicates it or whatever, and then we can key it in the database. Obviously, if they call us up the last day on Monday at 3 o'clock and say, how do I get in? We can't get their Hunter Ed information in, and at that point, their only alternative is to submit the information with their application, a paper application. Monty pointed out too that we do have hundreds of folks every year who contact us at the beginning, anytime from now, actually, through, I'm seeing emails now going out where they say, gee, I'd like to, get notified next year. How does this work? And when you tell us you want to be on the list, we add your client record to the file, and that, because you've never applied before on the web, you get a paper app. And that may in itself be an encouragement to apply on paper the first time out, just because you got a paper app in the mail. And so that's probably also contributing to this. I think clearly we need to take a look at those people and find out how many of them have really been there before and there's 0 points because they drew, and how many of them have been there before and have no points because they don't buy a license. And so they're not accumulating points, and how many of them are truly new, and those that are truly new, are they in groups, are they applying with someone else, or how are they applying? I think we need to take a look at that number and say, okay, there's 1,200 people there, how does that break out into maybe 3 or 4 categories? So.
Commissioner Rain.
Couple things on this we need to probably think about, and hopefully the last one will be somewhat constructive. First is I don't know about those big box monsters Mr. Sefton's referring to, but you can go to your local independent grocer and get a credit card. Small towns like Eureka, I'm a grocer for the record, a little store. Anyways, you don't know me. Anyways, small towns like Eureka come from, people that live in and around that immediate community probably have greater access to computers than people who live in the city. You want to go down to the local library, everybody knows where it is. Live in Reno, you might not know where it is. You want to go in, there's not a line, it does go around the corner, and it'll take you like a minute and a half to get there. Walking, car, maybe longer than that. So that is not the issue. I think it's still the ones that live out many miles out. The fiscal incentive for the convenience fee, as aforementioned, that is probably large. It'd be interesting how large. If that was reduced or there was no benefit to doing that, we'd probably see the numbers drop. It'd be interesting how much. I don't think we should be looking at 2013 for a deadline on this. 2014 or whatever, that's reasonable. If we really want to pump this up, I'd say, hey, okay, 2013, if we decide next month or next meeting that we need to do this and it has to be done, well, whatever. 2013, let's put it on the applications, be right there. This is your last chance, guys. Next year, it's different. You know, let's try to do everything we can to keep these in there. Something, I mean, I'm just saying that in lightly, but in correct wording. Let's throw that out there. Let's try to keep these people in here as much as we possibly can. A last call would probably get those people so that they're not there in 2013 saying, well, why can't I get this printed out? Come on, I'm trying to get it done. Give them as much time as we can. There's no real rush. Nobody's been saying Endow's going broke because we're still doing this. We haven't even had the numbers. We don't have the numbers, so it must not be that bad. Why not do our best we can for these people? Thank you.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, Bob Hoyne for the record. I just passed out a list of libraries identified at publiclibraries.com, and certainly not knowing if these are all viable living libraries, but on that list there's 90 libraries in 57 cities in Nevada. So, I mean, just to give you a perspective of libraries out there.
Anything else?
Patrick Cates, I just wanted to add that I know all of the public libraries in the state participate in a consortium with the state of Nevada and the state library to ensure that they have technology and they have computers. A few years back when I worked with them, that we were working on getting grant money to make sure that not only did they have internet access, but they were getting high-speed broadband access. So every public library in the state should have internet access.
Okay, any further discussion? All right.
So I'm sensing, I guess I'll talk to Ken about this, but there's a desire here that we reach out and try to communicate with these folks. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and move on to, remember there's two parts to this. The second, related to online, is a proposal that System Consultant has on reallocating tags to alternates. And again, depending on where we want to go with this, this could be an action item that we might bring back for your December meeting. But again, just very briefly on the paper, conditions for returning a tag, you know, we've got a long-standing process to allow for tags to be returned under certain stipulations, and I think you know them all pretty well: death, military, and medical reasons. And provided we get those back before the start of the seasons, you're looking at a refund involved with that, along with reestablishing bonus points and eligibility. 2008, this commission adopted what we called a return a tag for any reason. You may recall that initially that was targeted for, we were thinking about that being targeted for those folks who drew more than one tag. There's a number of people in this room recall a gentleman that was hated by every hunter in the state who came to the commission, and he drew 5 tags, and he was pleading with the commission with the ability to turn some of them in. And you know, everybody would love to be in his situation, but he has no recourse, and that was kind of the impetus to return a tag for any reason. Generally, well, certainly bonus points and eligibility are reinstated, and with the exception of a few tags, sheep and goat specifically, that are returned by the 15th of July, those tags that come back to us are not reallocated. And the main reason for that was, and Don presented this to the TAC, was a concern that not knowing the magnitude, the potential magnitude, it's his operators that do that relook and reallocation, and we just didn't know how big that was going to be. And so anyhow, the current methodology for reallocating return tags, this is an NAC, and this is a linear, potentially timely process, but basically SCI staff has to contact the first person on, or the next person, first person on the alternate list by phone, and it may take up to 2 days based on 4 attempts to contact them. So anyhow, now that we've had a couple of years under our belt, we looked at the numbers, and that's in Table 1. And for the most part, those are tags that are not reallocated, so those are unused tags. The good years to get a sense of the count is 2010 and 2011, and that's ranging between 300 and almost 400, and 2012 is incomplete, but I think everything indicates we'll probably be over 400 for that. Then Table 2 kind of breaks that down a little further. You can see the species that those tags are returned for. The bulk, understandably, are antelope and deer. So then, to take it a step further, we looked at the return questionnaires. And this was news to me, but over an 11-year period, those who, based on their questionnaire response, basically told us, about 8% of them told us, you know, they didn't hunt on a tag, and we don't really know why. And that was pretty consistent over those 11 years. So Table 4 kind of combines the two and identifies unused tags, and so the last couple of years it's been averaging about 9% of tags that go unused. So Don is going to address this here in a minute, but simply put, his proposal is during the online application process that you as an applicant will have a box that you will acknowledge whether or not you want to, if you're unsuccessful, you'll acknowledge whether or not you want to accept a tag as an alternate. And again, I'll let Don go into the details of that, but certainly that's going to turn these tags around much quicker, and we'll certainly get a number of tags reissued to folks. So I guess our view was you have a couple of options here. You can leave the process as it is, and the tags that are returned just go unused, and I know a number of you do not want to do that. Another alternative you have is to go back to pre-2008 and take that off the books. But there's some folks that believe that we make it a little too easy sometimes for people to turn tags in. Anecdotally, we had one gentleman call who said he scouted one day, didn't see, I think he was scouting for deer, didn't see anything, he turned his tag in just for that reason. And we don't have a lot of details on all of those. We have some of that information, but that was one example. So we've talked a number of things in amongst our staff and with Don and his crew, and you know, what are the potential scenarios that could be out there, and really of all those that we looked at, it really boils down to the timing of when those tags might be reallocated. Initially we started talking about, you know, do we do it 1 or 2 days before the season starts? And I think for a lot of folks that might be untenable for them, you know, for a number of reasons. So the question becomes, if we do this, you know, what's that timing? Do we do it a week before? Do we do it 2 weeks or 3 weeks? And that'll be up to the discussions that you have. So with that, let me turn it to Don and see if he wants to add any more on that.
No, I'm not going to go through the proposed approach. I think Bob summarized it. It's in your paper. If you have questions, you can go to it. I will say it was my response to a request. It kind of sounds almost like it's our proposal that we're trying to talk you guys into something, and we're not. If you want to keep the status quo, that's fine by me. I've had a lot of pressure from public, from the wildlife advisory boards, and from the commission, even from folks in the game division within NDOW saying, you know, we have to find a way to get these tags that are unused back out there. We need to have more opportunity for people. And so there's got to be some way to do it. And I floundered with it for a long time. And finally, when I was at the Las Vegas meeting, I came up, the previous one, I came up with a thought of how we might do it, and I floated it, and that's what's in that document that Bob attached. So I'll leave it to questions, unless somebody feels I should give a presentation about how it would work. I will warn you that Rob Bonamici has said he'll tase me if this goes on too long. So,
yes. I'm going to start out before I call on anybody. We had the tag allocation committee years ago, and when we came up with return a tag for any reason, Commissioner Jeffers was the chairman of the tag allocation committee. And it was our understanding at that time, and I've talked to Jim about this since, that we were going to review it for a year on the outside, 2 years, and see how many were coming back and come up with a vehicle to get those tags back into the hands of the people. Jim and I took a vacation from the Wildlife Commission at that point, and it kind of got dropped. So here we're 4 years later, and we're trying to get this thing back going, and it's something I believe in. We have demand out there, we have tags, and where we have tags, we got to get into the hands of people demanding to have them. So I think that in the modern day, I fought against it a minute ago on another topic, but in the modern day, there's a vehicle to make this work and take the burden off of Don's staff and still make it a foolproof manner. You know, the system was set up now was so people couldn't game the system and give tags to their friends, and that's plain and simple. With technology now, we're well beyond that, and there's a vehicle to do it. Don has it. We need to use it. So with that being said, Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, the only question I had for you, Don, is how much lead time would you need ahead of a season to reissue a tag? I mean, in the time it takes you for someone to call, say, I'm giving this back, collect the tag and reissue.
I have the suspicion that our need for lead time is less than, than the hunters, if you will. We threw out a week because we're mailing a tag and everything, and we didn't think that people would want to get the tag after the season had already started, like if we did it up until the day before. We threw out a week. Bob questioned that and said, you know, where did you get that? Why wasn't it 2 weeks, or why wasn't it 3 weeks? And I think that's I'll say a social issue, because you guys have a better sense of people wanting to scout and plan and vacations and everything else, and to saddle someone with a tag 10 days before the hunt starts, maybe that's too short a time. From our perspective, we could do anything from a week or longer.
And not to launch us back into the pop-up discussion, but I'm assuming you do it kind of for each species, or however we wanted to do it. And then you could write right in there, you know, up to 2 weeks prior to the start of the season, or
correct. The intent was you'd specify it for the species that you applied for. That's the way alternates work now. So it's not like, well, I applied for deer, but if an elk tag popped up, could I have it? It wouldn't be that kind of situation. It would be for the species, because that eliminates all of the eligibility issues and everything else.
I had a pretty long discussion with Bob and Maureen on the phone about, you know, this topic, and you know, is 2 weeks too short? Should it be midsummer? But then and they brought up, well, if it was a sheep tag, would you want a week prior to it? I said, if you tell me there's 3 days left in the season, you send me that sheep tag, I'm going. So, you know, I think hunters want to get in the field. And so with that being said, you know, ideally we'd like to scout and do the things, but you give him a hunter an opportunity to go, he's going to go. Commissioner Rain.
Thank you. You know, this conversation has been had by a lot of people. There was a lot of general consensus, call it, not necessarily unanimous, but call it general. And the one thing that I think, so far as instead of reallocation, it was let's pre-allocate, over-allocate a certain amount once we figure out what that is. That was brought up at that time. It was brought up by several commissioners. Hey, we don't know what it is. We can't over-allocate now, but in a couple years, we'll know if it's 0.25% or 5% or 50% of the tags are returned, and we will be able to, with a reasonable amount, with a little bit of history behind us, say, hey, okay, it's now 2% of the tags are returned. Let's over-allocate 2% of the over-allocate tags 2%. It'll be 0 if it's relatively stable. We've got a little history behind us. That's simpler. It's a whole lot less paperwork. That was what was discussed and thrown out as an option. And, you know, we haven't really had the history up until about now. We're starting to get the history. Therefore, same number of hunters in the field, and, you know, it was thrown out, well, you know, it could be an aberration. Could be, and that's why a lot of it came back to the sheep and goats, because they're so small numbers in any given unit. That wouldn't work out. But for deer and antelope, I'd kind of like to see where the numbers are and, you know, get somebody's idea on from the history of what is possible for over-allocating a small percentage, whatever it's been, as opposed to that. Would that be simpler? And Don probably has a better answer on that than most folks.
Well, from my perspective, it would be simpler for us. I would point out, again, I'm going to say I don't have a dog in the biological fight here, but let me just throw out a couple of issues. The airlines do something like this, where they over-allocate seats. And we've all been in the airport where they said, we'll give you $200 and a round-trip ticket anywhere in the country if you'll push your flight to a later flight. And it's because they are under some strictures from the FAA to treat passengers in a certain way. We're going to have similar situations in that sometimes you can't predict behavior, and if you over-allocate in a unit and everybody wants to go, what are you going to do about that? Because you've got county wildlife advisory boards that want to talk to you about reducing something by 2 tags. So what's going to happen if you over allocate by 10% and all those people decide to go that year? Just like what happens when everybody shows up at the airport and wants to be on that flight that historically 17% of the people have not made it for that flight. I think that may be a bigger issue, and it's not in my bailiwick. It would be easier for us if you guys just bumped all the quotas and maybe had a different percentage for each species, that it was 2% for sheep and 10 for deer or whatever, but I think you'd have some other issues there, and I think it would require a lot of thought.
But what has it been? It's been really low, and I'm not talking about sheep and goat. Well, you know, that push them off to the side. What's it been for deer and antelope? I mean, it's been low.
10%, 9%.
Has it been all?
Yeah, those are in those statistics that Bob gave you.
I saw them on the thing. This thing I have my hard copy of, and I saw them. There was an email that came out later on them, but.
That didn't hunt. Are you talking about the returns or the didn't hunt?
The returns.
No, I'm talking about the didn't hunt, because I think
They actually returned the tags.
Yeah.
People that returned the tags. It wasn't that.
Yeah, but I think that's.
It wasn't much. Not the didn't hunt.
That's
Not the didn't
okay.
hunt.
Well, the didn't hunt, I think, has to be factored in that as well. Would be what I guess would be.
Well, it's got to be factored in. Many years behind us now. I think that has been, but the return tags, that's what's new.
Anybody else have anything? Seeing none, do you have anything else, Mr. Nguyen? Mr. Sefton?
No, I don't. And again, I'm anticipating we're going to at least be coming back with a recommendation to go forward with this one, provided we
I can't hear you.
provided we address any of the open issues out of this. But I'm anticipating for December we'll be coming back with a proposal.
At least one commissioner would support you coming back with a proposal similar to what Mr. Sefton's developed.
Yes. Thank you.